know, I'm looking out into this group and I see many veterans of our DWS program, but I'm bringing three very distinct veterans up to the stage that are going to talk to you about the realization of the implementation of AI and the technologies that we represent. Because we thought it would be giving you a good perspective of, if people have been working at this a while and able to execute, how might you tackle the problem, or how might you accelerate your opportunity? And so I'd like to bring to the stage three very distinguished speakers. The first is Matthew Tate, returning again for another year. He is the product manager for AI at Allstate. Matthew. Apparently, enough of you don't have insurance with Allstate. That should have been a much louder clap. You want to try that again? That's good. Next, we'll be joined by a very distinguished managing director of Alvarez and Marsal, and herself I would call a guide for AI implementation, given her experience both as a user and now as a consultant. Jean Hill. And then lastly, we'll be joined, this is a person that I've done a number of these kinds of panels with, and that's why we asked him back. He can tolerate me. But he's also an expert in the area of wealth management, Tom DiCarlo. Now, one of the things that we promised to do is manage time. And so one of the things that we'll do is we'll shorten a bit about some of the questions that we're going to ask and discuss, but we will also probably not have a chance then to have the audience interact, but please seek them out as they head to lunch, annoy them, harass them, and ask them any additional questions you might have. They're more than willing to answer those, correct? Oh, good. They're obedient. I like this. All right. So the first question to the team is, how do you establish goals that are both financial in nature and customer experience related, such that when achieved, you can truly declare success? And so, Tom, I'm going to ask you if you would start.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. So I think the goals in themselves, regardless of if they're CX related or financial, integrate together, because all in one is the definition of success there. Obviously, in order to obtain the investment from the executive committee to implement a piece of technology, you're giving your right arm from a financial perspective, and the first thing they want is the ROI. How many FTE are going to disappear as we implement this? A lot of the challenge there is, and we'll talk a little bit about CX, but the adoption rate, right? The way in which we are implementing the technology and offering some quick wins out to my clients, both internal and external, for them to begin to use the technology, get comfortable with it, and then leverage that technology instead of the human beings. The client experience, I would define that as being measured from a quality point of view. So the quality of the interaction, single interaction, containment. So are we satisfying that inquiry point of call or point of interaction with Amelia? And then at the end of the day, how are we driving down the interactions in themselves?
So from your consulting and advisory kind of capacity, what are you teaching and telling corporations to do to try to match this kind of dual challenge?
Sure.
It probably is.
Okay. So one of the things that we do is we also look at the productivity of the users. So everything from monitoring how things worked before we started with whether it's IP Center, One Desk, or Amelia, but really looking at the end-to-end consumption and then looking at it after we've implemented. So there was one time that we were able to save, in essence, the hourglass showing up on a call center's desktop for about 10 minutes a day. We'll take 10 minutes a day times 30,000 call center agents times 2 to 250 days a year, and it was in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So we went to management and said, you know what, we'll take a haircut. We saved you 10% of that. So we also look at showing people the true productivity of the tool, so not just on what it costs to make, but really thinking on the value that it is giving.
Great, a yield that could be very, very positive. Now, Matt, you've been one of the initiators of what we call the whispering agent and bringing that into your call centers at Allstate. Tell us a little bit about, again, how did you manage both of those challenges, improving customer experience and matching and meeting financial goals?
I think what's really important is not only what Tom said, because those are the key indicators. It's really easy within a call center to map to what your KPIs are, where you want to move the needle. I think what's even more important is to understand the frustrations that you remove from your environment. And those are unrealized benefit within your organization. So it's very easy to quantify all the things that you know you want to improve, whether that's average handle time, cycle time, first call resolution. But when you really start to look at how this product becomes a differentiator, and how your employees, your salespeople, or even your consumers are able to remove frustration from the experience that they have with you, that's when you really start to realize the power of a digital colleague like Amelia.
So we've always, I think, talked with everybody about the challenge they have. It seems to me that in order to get AI funding, you've got to prove that you can displace workers. That seems to be the heavy emphasis. But over the last year or two, we've been seeing a shift in what we'll call the C-suite focus on CX. Are you seeing CX maybe take a lead here as you look at how do you get a project funded, started, and delivered? Are you seeing a difference in just pure FTE takeout?
Sure, I'll start. Yeah. Absolutely. So from a C-suite perspective, focusing in on financial services and wealth management in itself, the firm is always focused on ensuring we're keeping the best talent at the firm. And when I say the best talent, these are the financial advisors that are bringing in the revenue, keeping them happy with tools, with products and services that are best for them and their clients, one of which is the interaction with operations, with service, and with the home office businesses. Having a tool like AI is the differentiator in some points, or at least when I go to the conferences and we talk about next generation, it ends up spending 20, 30, 40 minutes just talking about what we're doing with Amelia. And second to none, it is helping. So containment, ensuring that you're not having the attrition, ensuring that we're supporting the sales force and their clients.
That's a great topic that we've talked a lot about in previous DWSs, which is the whole stabilization of the workforce as it moves into a call center type environment where they can gain educational support, support from a technical aspect, et cetera. Again, having pioneered this whispering agent as you have. Tell me, Matt, a bit about how's that working from the employee standpoint, a little bit more of what Tom just shared with us?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to realize that you can use this capability beyond just call centers. I think a lot of areas, it's easy to go to call centers initially. That's your low-hanging fruit. So now at Allstate, what we're trying to see is how can we use Amelia to be a digital sales colleague? So how can we reimagine this technology to actually support expert in sales to really enable them to be even better at their job? So while we started with the contact center, it was very logical for us to start there and learn a lot with the technology. Our newer use cases are taking us more into the field. How do we provide this immediate assistant that's omnipresent right there where they need it, and ultimately start to really augment how they're able to service our customers? At Allstate, we call the actual agents who sell the insurance to the customer a trusted advisor. So how do we use Amelia as an example to be more proactive and predictive to really provide that support right there in the moment? So while the contact center and the success that we've had there is a great way to prove the concept, really how can we start to use this digital sales colleague that's always available right there in the moment to, like I said earlier, remove those frustrations, further enable them to be that trusted advisor for the customer right there in the moment, and really, again, provide an experience that does not exist today in the current tools that you have within your enterprise.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt. Jean, your observations.
Sure. So when we're talking to CEOs, CFOs, As they're looking to transform their companies and you're looking to go on the digital transformation, has to be led top down, and it has to be led by what the customer cares about, and they need to be customer centric. So what they're looking at is I don't want to call it table stakes, but I agree with Matt. You try it out small. You try it out to learn how you get that muscle memory within the organization. But they can now start to think of doing their research and development and bring new products to market using AI and machine learning as they're focused on their clients. So, we'll work with some companies where if they could find out, even just from the news of what's happening, you call a contact center and they know where you work and they said, there's this going on. Are you now worried about your job? Should we be helping you think of refinancing your mortgage? Are there other support systems that we can go? So with the machine learning, you can do in nanoseconds what it would take humans hours to do. So the C-suite is really looking at it as a differentiator and as new revenue streams and as augmented products.
I think that one of the things that we all struggle with, many in this room, is that we've gone out and we've introduced the concept of a pilot or a proof of concept. And so we get funding for that and we begin that implementation. Getting from pilots and POCs to production, getting from a modest amount of money and investment to now really bringing it into production and spending the kind of investment dollars that are required. Any hints that you'd like to give to the group here in terms of how do you progress from that sampling into actually production utilization? Jean, I think you were going to mention.
Yeah, so we look at it as hiring a digital workforce. And we've actually put a paradigm together of cradle to grave of what you do in hiring human labor and then what you do in hiring digital labor. So whether it's the on-campus, whether it's the experienced hire, how do you then deal with onboarding? How do you deal with training? How do you deal with promotions? So for us, promotions are how do we give them more responsibilities? How do we expand what they're doing? How do we move them to different departments? So we've really looked at it the same way in looking through that. And when you can start with something small, like say, okay, we're going to a new college. We're going to go hire 3 people, $50,000, $100,000, and you're going to see what those employees and what they can do. And so all you're then doing is expanding your recruiting from that college. And we don't call it a pilot or a proof of concept. It's really learning how to deal with it within the organization.
Right. I love the idea of there's a commitment right from the start. You could call it pilot or a proof of concept, but you're committed and you're going to work towards the production. That, I think, gives more commitment on the company's part. But Tom, your comment?
Sure. So I think when we initially introduced Amelia into the organization, we did so with a complex proof of concept pilot around retirement, death distribution, document requirements for beneficiaries, something that would take a 15 to 20-year employee's knowledge and experience to answer when you have 25 to 30 different documents that a sales assistant would need to have a beneficiary sign in order to take control of the assets in the account. And then we did something a little bit different. And I worked with the IPsoft team, putting a deck together to go and speak about the pilot itself and how powerful it was for the 3 months we had it up and running. We put together a movie, a short movie video outlining the experience, the interactions, as well as the true text back and forth between Amelia and our sales assistants that were part of the pilot. That movie in itself went all the way up to our CEO, and within hours, I had conversations across the globe with my peers on how they can help to take part in this journey. So just showing people where it's going to impact them and how broad, I think somebody was saying it, how broad, it's not just a contact center technology product. There are opportunities to use these tools across the organization, front and back office.
Well, we had the pleasure of seeing your movie. It got released, it went viral. It's called The Avengers something. I remember it. It was awesome. Well done. Well done. Matt, was there additional comment you wanted to make?
I mean, I think really Gene and Tom said it best. Really, when you start to understand that The only limitation is what you believe is possible with the technology is when you really start to find those new use cases you've never thought of before. I would really encourage you, as you're looking at this technology, to not fall prey to what is common, which is what is the low-hanging fruit and the simplest thing to go do, because you're probably not the only person thinking to automate or eliminate that task or that process. But to Tom's point, with our more advanced use cases, we are starting to get more into deeper domains of knowledge that require a lot of expertise, and it's really incredible the experience our users have with Amelia now, because they are really starting to get a type of value that they can't get today. So I would really encourage you to, it's easy to start small and simple just as a proof of concept to see, but really start to imagine what could be with a technology like this that can really disrupt your entire way that you process and operate.
So you touched on a concept that I'd like to finish up with, which is what I describe as a juicy use case, right? Being timid with use cases doesn't necessarily get you to that next phase. It doesn't really necessarily prove what it is you had set out. It doesn't really set the company on its ear. It doesn't really move the digital transformation. It's got to be something significant that gets the organization committed, and then obviously we've got to jointly execute. Your sense of that juicy use case?
I think it's a really good question, right? So I think that's what every person in here is probably wondering. What is our juicy use case that we could look for, that we should set out on and really strategize and build a strong business plan around to really bring a technology like this in and completely change in our entire organization? I think it really comes down to what is the tolerance within your company for disruptive change, right? So you're not going to necessarily bring something in and all of a sudden say, okay, we're going to remove all of our brokers and now we're going to have a digital colleague, if you will, sell life insurance. But you really could look at how you could use a technology like that in a very complex space, integrate it with your system so that it's as aware as possible, it can be as proactive and predictive as possible, and in the moment of a call, perhaps with a customer, augment that person's ability to sell to them like you have never been able to before. A real simple example in insurance world is maybe a customer's calling in and we know because we're integrated with their policy level detail they added a minivan. Maybe we make an assumption that they have had a child because most single guys don't buy minivans. So maybe we want to talk about life insurance with them, right? Maybe that's an opportunity to offer up life insurance sales pass. How can we be successful with this customer and cross-sell an insurance policy? And that's even better for Allstate, for our agents, and for the customer, because we're providing protection for them that they may have never thought about. And that's something that Amelia, as an example, could do for us and should do, right? It should be proactive and predictive. It should think about what is the need before you realize that there is a need, and then how can she walk your expert through being even more of an expert than they thought that they were.
I'm fascinated by the minivan connection to having children. I'm not sure in which step that goes, but that's a fascinating side. Jean, your opinions.
Yeah, sure. A lot of times we go back to A, what problem we're trying to solve, and B, where is the executive sponsorship? And so, we'll tackle the tough things first, not the easy things. But there's also, you have to understand who are the naysayers and how do you have to show them that this technology will work in their organization. It will make mistakes less than its human counterpart and really start to go on that journey. So we look at the organization, and then what we initially will look for as an initial use case is where is the elapsed time to solve the problem, or where is the human to consuming, so that they're not doing things that an Amelia or other AI can solve very quickly, and so that you show them on an elapsed time, you take it from 3 hours to 9 minutes. You show them that you can now do that minivan, bringing it up right away, because the human would have to log into 5 systems
Right.
to know that information.
Right.
And so it's not feasible. So those are the two ways that we look at it.
Excellent, excellent. Tom?
So I think I spoke about it, right? It was the complex use case that we chose for the POC. We were going to choose a high volume use case, but the use case we chose was probably it was the number one least successful interaction we had within the service organization facing off to the field. We did not get it right the first time, 40 or 50% of the time. 2, 3, 4 calls at a time CSAs would have to make because we were not giving them the right information. We had a 100% success rate with the first interaction while we were doing the POC, and the satisfaction rate was improved by more than 20%, just because as the conversation was taking place between Amelia and the CSA, Amelia was filling out the documents for the CSA, and at the end of that conversation, emailing a PDF to the CSA just needed to have the client sign it, and it was done. That was it. Versus, let me take the information that I have from a human being on the phone, let me go do additional research and homework, let me go get the documents and fill them out, and then let me go get them to the client. We reduced probably 30 to 40% of the workload just for the CSA on that one interaction.
So I want to thank my distinguished panel. You're not only veterans of AI implementation and advice, but you're also really good at time management, and it's up. So thank you all, and thank my 3 distinguished guests.